And as you just heard, the heavy clashes broke out between Palestinian terrorists and Israeli troops in the city of Jenin on Monday as Israeli security forces were carrying out a counter-terror operation. 7 Israeli soldiers were wounded. This was a very unusual incident, and this week, ILTV's Insider is going to take an in-depth look into what happened in Jenin. And so joining us now with more is ILTV correspondent and host of Insider, Steve Liebowitz. Steve, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Lidar.
So tonight's Insider focusing on the incident in Jenin. What can you tell us?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that Jenin has, just the word Jenin has connotations, the name. Jenin, the movie, the documentary. 2002, there was a major battle in the city of Jenin. 23 soldiers were killed, over 50 Palestinians lost their lives there. Those were the days, the heady days of post-Oslo. Now we have a return to a situation where the situation is out of control in certain Palestinian-controlled cities. And Israel went in yesterday. An Apache had to be used, as you said. We're going to talk about just where are we at in terms of the security situation. Mm-hmm.
And what update can you provide us on the soldiers that were injured? What's their condition today?
There's one that's in serious condition. There are 3, I believe, that are still in hospital. As of the time, I believe that in the next hours, by tomorrow morning, there may only be 1 or 2 remaining in hospital. So their injuries were light to moderate. The soldiers will all be, knowing our soldiers, they'll be back on the front lines within a matter of days, most of them.
And so who are your guests for the show today?
So we have Aryeh Lightstone, who is an architect of the Abraham Accords. And Miri Eisen, Colonel Miri Eisen, who's from IDF Intelligence. We'll sort of do a mash where we're both looking at some of the security incidents that go on, and at the same time, Israel trying to develop the Abraham Accords and how one influences the other.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you mentioned, I mean, this really was a very rare event. We saw the Apache helicopter in Judea and Samaria. I mean, what is your take on this? You brought us back to the, to the post-Oslo days. Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Look, there were many different periods. I personally was in the Army patrolling around in Ramallah with very little tension in the 1980s and in Nablus, and so on, the end of the 1980s. There were other times when it was literally impossible to enter into all of these areas because they were completely controlled by Yasser Arafat and the Palestinian Authority and their police, and there was a very strict separation, but there was security cooperation between Israel and the Palestinians. What's happened in recent years, and in recent months in particular, is a total breakdown, complete breakdown of that security cooperation. There is no Palestinian Authority presence in northern Samaria. We're talking about Jenin, we're talking about Nablus. So Israel is in a situation where maybe it's not enough to only be sending in these pinpoint raids. Now, in order to enter into Jenin and go after terrorists, you have to send in columns of armored vehicles, and even those columns of armored vehicles come under attack. Yesterday, we actually had to send in an Apache, not to attack, but to help extricate wounded soldiers. Not a good situation.
Not a good situation. I mean, there is talk, as you mentioned, that Judea and Samaria is turning into Gaza, that the Palestinian Authority really is losing control over sections of Judea and Samaria, and that a major operation may be forthcoming, may be necessary. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think that there are certain elements within our government that are actually pushing in the direction of a major operation, and there are other elements, I think the defense minister is among them, that does not think the time is right, doesn't think it's necessary. What do we mean by an operation? It means basically the Israeli reoccupation of the towns in the Palestinian Authority that are under limited self-rule today, to completely occupy them, to go house to house in some of the most densely populated Palestinian areas in the country, with losses that would certainly come to our forces as well, and to live with the consequences of the impact that
I'm not sure it would be precisely an occupation, but it would be sort of going in sort of a more widespread counter-terror operation to really, but we would have to go in there, absolutely. All right, Steve, thank you so much, and stay with us because we are going to have one of your guests join us